Okay, great. So we're recording. So thanks so much for joining the maiden episode of Develop Your A Game Mind Mapping Session. And it's really a pleasure to have Chief Facilitator for today, Dr. Ofrey. If you've ever listened to any of the podcasts, you would have heard about Dr. Ofrey's fantastic track record, not just in also tech as it.
So I might just switch over my network again.
Quality healthcare to the elderly via apps. So it's really a pleasure to have him. And he's also a seasoned speaker and a blue ocean strategy consultant. So, he's been doing this a very long time. And I just had to get him on this special thing, which is amazing insights with us. So I hope you all have your pens and your notepads so you can take notes, because once he starts going, there'll be so many things for you to capture. So Dr. Ofrey, thank you so much once again for educating my community. I feel very enriched by your presence tonight. I don't take it for granted at all. We really look forward to seeing you as you expound on the principles of success, wealth, as in the Bible. The Bible contains ancient wisdom, which we all are familiar with. Ancient wisdom that is still then. Well, actually, the Bible was written in the 16th century, so so centuries later, the wisdom of the Bible is still very much for our daily for these times. These precarious times we're living in COVID. So I want you to take it away. No more from me. Please, the floor is yours. So welcome everybody once again. Invite your friends to tell them about this so they can all come in. But we are recording, so yeah.
All right. So thank you very much, Beverly. It's indeed a pleasure to be here this evening and have your platform to be able to talk to the people and share just a few things about how the scriptures help us to live a successful and prosperous life. As we start, I would like to thank us first for two things. First is our time, because there are 1,000,001 places we could be right now, but we all chose to be here. So thank you. The first time I really understood the importance of time was when I heard Brian Tracy say life management is time management, or time management is life management. And so this evening, you are giving us a part of your life. The question is, are you spending this time or are you investing it? Because if you're spending it, you're likely not to get the time back. But if you're investing it, you will get it back in multiples. And I believe the latter is the case today. So thank you for your time. Secondly, I would like to thank you for your trust, because many of you are here based on trust. Many have never heard about me. You don't know who I am, but are here trusting that you will receive the value you intend to receive. And so you logged into this call. So speaking of trust, it reminds me of a story of this young man walking at the edge of a cliff in the desert. Unfortunately for him, he tripped over a stone and fell over the cliff. But fortunately, he had the presence of mind to hold on to a branch as he was falling. So there he was, hanging thousands of feet from the ground. He looked up in the air and shouted, "Is there anybody up there that can help me?" There was no response. He shouted again, "Is there anybody up there that can help me?" Still no response. Then suddenly there was a quiet calm, and a voice from the sky said, "I am God. All you need to do is trust and let go of that branch you're holding." He looked down and he looked up. He looked down again and he looked up. But this time he shouted, "Is there anybody else up there that can help me?" So my hope for us today is that we actually let go of whatever branch we're holding and trust. Because many of us are from different backgrounds, different disciplines, different trainings. As such, some things you might hear today might be contrary to what you already know, or they might be from a different perspective, especially as I'll be focused on the scriptures. The fact I'm saying it does not make it right. It does not make it wrong. It just makes it my experience. But what I can tell you is that the principles you will hear today have transformed my life and transformed the life of thousands and thousands of people. So yeah, it's open for you to try it out. Whatever works for you, yeah, perfect for you to keep. And whatever doesn't is okay if you toss it out. The second thing I want to point out is the fact that you are on this call means you belong to the top 10% of whichever society you find yourself. Be it in Nigeria, be it in the UK, be it in the US, wherever you are. The fact that you are here tells me you belong to the top 10% of society. Why do I say so? Because research has consistently shown that only the top 10% of people take out time to develop themselves. And if you are here and research shows that, what does that tell me? Yeah, it means you belong to this top 10%. I'm sure some of you may be thinking, only if Dr. AB knew how much I had in my bank account. Only if he knew how much the effects of 2020 ravaged my account, he will not be saying that. But I tell you, I will still be saying this because everything happens twice. First in our minds and then in the physical. The Bible tells us in Genesis 2:3 that God rested on the seventh day from the creation, from what he had created and made. It's important to know that's not tautology. And by tautology, I mean using a word that means the same thing in quick succession. He said created and made because these are different things. He first conceptualized these things, had a vision of it before he brought it to the physical. Every single thing you are seeing today is an obsolete thought of somebody. Somebody first thought about it. The device you are using was first a thought in somebody's mind before it came into reality. And so the fact that you are here tells me you are in the creation phase. Now, the speed at which you will get to the make or manifestation phase is dependent on you. Again, the Bible tells us in Ecclesiastes 11:3 that once the clouds are full, the rain will fall. The question is, how fast can you fill these clouds for your rain to begin to fall? Fortunately, I attended a business seminar some years back, and the business mentor said something. He said the only evidence of learning is an improved behavior. If your behavior doesn't change, it means you have not learned. And so learning has two parts. We have increase in capacity and increase in capability. The problem is that many people increase their capacity, their knowledge, but they don't increase their capability. That's doing the things they've learned. So that's why you hear, I've heard this before. But the question is, have you done it before? All right. So taking us further, since I'll be spending a little time with us today, I thought it was important I tell you a bit about myself. As has been mentioned, my name is Dr. A.B. Ofrey, not Humphrey, like some like to say, and not offering, like others like to say, but offering. I know it's a unique name because it was actually shortened from a much longer name. The much longer name is Ofrima, which means shark from where I'm from. But my great-grandfather shortened it to Ofrey. As such, you will find maybe 2 or 3 people with that name in Nigeria. So I understand it's peculiar. And as been pointed out also, I have been a doctor now this is my 20th year as a doctor, and about 11 years as a strategic innovation consultant. I've also worked in private and public hospitals, and currently I'm the co-founder and CEO of a health technology company that was founded just over 3 years ago. And in that short space of time, we've been featured in BBC. We've won 7 international awards for innovation and hundreds of thousands of dollars in investment revenue and so on and so forth. But this has not always been the case. Like many of us, I have tried every and anything in the past to make some money. I had owned a business center, had a cab service, sold and manufactured paint, sold health insurance. It got to a point that I'll see somebody, I'll know I've sold him something before, but I will not be able to remember what. I had heard about this thing called profit, but somehow I never seemed to make any. Not because I had no idea what business was, because by that time I had finished my MBA, for which I graduated with a distinction. My business plans had won numerous awards nationally. And so to an extent, I can say I knew what business was, but somehow I didn't seem to be making the impact and profits I thought I deserved to make. And then as I got closer to God, I realized that almost every principle I've read about or heard about or attended or seminars I had attended, what they had said was all found in the Bible. So I decided to trace my steps back and discover for myself what the Bible says about success. And that also gave rise to my book, Becoming a God Kind of Millionaire, and also the principles we will hear about today. But going forward, the plan for today is to ensure that 2021 is the best year we have had so far. Many of us at the end of the year have expectations. By the end of or beginning of 2020, a lot of us were in services claiming and receiving. But somehow by the end of the year, our expectations did not match our claims, and the things we received. Many people blame God. Some blame their pastors, and some are not even sure what exactly happened. So today, my goal is to provide a sort of how-to manual to ensure 2021 is different from every other year we have gone through. And I'll be focused on certain principles that I have discussed over time. But in order to lay a foundation as to the validity and veracity of the scriptures, I'll give certain examples of things we do or hear about generally in the world that we don't expect is from the scriptures themselves. So the first example I'd like to give is when I was undergoing my postgraduate studies in Malaysia, my MBA. That was about 11 years ago. I had a penchant for attending business seminars. And in those seminars, a certain thread ran through all the sessions I attended, or majority of the sessions I attended. One in particular had a huge impact on me because it was a 3-day intensive course. It was called Millionaire Mind Intensive. And to understand the impact it had on me, I actually tattooed the phrase Millionaire Mind on my arm, just to remind me about that experience. But one thing I learned there was something T. Harv Eker said, which was the fact that the universe rewards us for giving and helping. So many of us think the philosophy of giving is just in the church, but the world seems to understand this far better than many of us think, because they understand that giving brings a certain degree of wealth and returns back to them. We believers have certain scriptures to back this. For instance, we know in Luke 6:38 where it says, "Give and to be given to you in good measure, pressed down, shaken together." This is just an iteration of what the world is doing. So they have these principles, they hear about these principles, they operate these principles, and we are not able to even connect it to the Bible because it's so effective for them. And we begin to say, what are these people doing? They are applying the same principles we're supposed to apply. For instance, in Proverbs, we see Proverbs 11:24. It says, there is, I'll read from the King James first to give us the biblical feeling, and then I'll read the easy to read, which simplifies it. It says, there is that scattereth and yet increaseth. There is that withholdeth more than is meet, but tendeth to poverty. So the easy to read says, some people give freely and gain more, others refuse to give and end up with less. Have we ever wondered why some of the biggest philanthropists and richest people seem to be the biggest philanthropists? Some will say it's because they have money, that's why they're giving. But I say they have because they give. because there are certain principles that have been understood, that have been placed in the Bible long ago, that people have begun to use now and are seeing the manifestations. What I liken it to is a manufacturer creates a product, he gives you the manual. So we boys, for instance, or we men now, have a good experience of this. When we were much younger, you get a device, you put the manual aside and start tinkering with it, and you gradually begin to understand how it works. And then you put these things down and say you discovered the way it works. But the manual had always been there. I remember the story of that there was a guy that was supposed to have discovered River Niger. I can't remember his name now. But the question is, that river was there long before he was born or his existence. So there is no way he could have discovered what was already in existence. And so many of the speakers and people we see talk about how they discovered certain principles, but these principles have been in existence before them. And these are the principles we have to look back to find out the key way to succeed. One of the other examples is something motivational speakers always say, from Zig Ziglar to Jim Rohn to Anthony Robbins to Les Brown, all of who are of the opinion or of the philosophy that you are what you think about. The Bible again in Proverbs tells us that a man is what he thinketh. This again is a scripture that has been there from time. I remember also recently listening to a book by Napoleon Hill. I'd read it some time back, but the book brought some things back to my memory, where he talked about auto-suggestion, which is saying the things you want to see back to yourself. Again, this has always been declared in the scriptures. Many of us believers know it as confessions. And so there are lots of principles that the Bible talks about that we see in existence. The interesting thing is that many of these principles are whosoever principles. So whosoever applies them gets the results. And so we see these things happen and believe these rules were in existence from the world, but they were not from the world. They've always been in existence. So this morning, this evening, I'll be talking again about one of these principles. And that's the principle we associate with businesses. So no businessman is successful without this principle, and the principle is called goal setting. But interestingly, we as believers understand it more as expectations. Because in the beginning of the year, you have expectations. At the end of the year, you ask yourself why your expectations met. But the problem is that many people start the year and don't clearly understand where they're going. The Bible tells us that people perish for a lack of vision. Some renditions say the people run naked for a lack of vision. Because if they have no idea where they're going, every road leads them to the place. Again, I listened to an audio book some time back that explains it like this. It talks about being blindfolded and then shooting an arrow to a target. First of all, you have no idea where the target is. And so you have no idea even which direction to shoot at. Secondly, even if peradventure somebody focuses your attention or faces you in the direction of the target, you have no idea if you are hitting it or how close you are to it. If you need to re-strategize or reevaluate, you have no idea. Peradventure, you even understand how close you are to the target. Even if you are hitting the target, you still don't even know you have hit it. So all your efforts are seemingly in vain. And that's what many people do. They start the year, they have no idea where they're going. But the fact is that even thinking of where you're going is just only one step. People still miss that step. But that step forms the foundation for everything else we're going to do. So today we'll be talking about 5 or 4 principles. If we have time, we'll talk about the 5th. That will be the bonus point for us. So whatever questions you have, you can either type them in the chat box or wait till the end when we take the Q&A sessions to have them addressed. So number 1 step we are supposed to take to ensure this year is the greatest year you've ever had is to determine what your expectations are. The first is to determine what the expectations are. Again, it's important to have a long view of your life, where you want to be, to help you plan better and create expectations that will take you closer to that destination. Many people just say, okay, I'm creating a New Year resolution of sorts and just pick out one or two things. The key is to link it to a much bigger vision. And so you're able to withstand whatever comes your way because you know you are going somewhere. If it's something that you just chose out of the air, based on the first obstacle, you are likely not to continue doing it. The key is to have a clear vision of where you want to go. Based on that vision, you pick your expectations in that regard. The Bible tells us something in Jeremiah 29:11. It says, "For I know the thoughts I think towards you, saith the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you an expected end." So there must be an expectation, there must be an expected end. Proverbs 23:18 says, "For surely there is an end, and an expectation shall not be cut off." So it's not an expectation in perpetuity. There must be an end. And once that end arrives, whatever expectation you had will not be cut off. The question is, there is a difference between expectation and want. It's possible for you to want something but not to expect it. I'll give this example of a community that was actually praying fervently for rain. They picked a particular day and they said on that day they will require rain to fall. They prayed for weeks on end for rain to fall on that particular day. But on that day, only one person went out with an umbrella. So it means though they all wanted it to rain, only one person expected it to rain. I make bold to say whatever we see at the end of the year may not be what we want, but it is to an extent what we expected. On Christmas Day, I had a mentor or mentee of mine visit. He had heard me speaking like this and saying a few words about, at the end of the year is what you expect to get. And he said there is a possibility that at the end of the year, what you are truly expecting you do not get. So I gave him one example. So peradventure, your expectation is to buy a car for those who don't have cars. But then you have a plan B, that in case the car does not arrive, let me put money aside to be saving for my Uber trips and my transportation and so on and so forth. And so you diligently plan for the plan B. In the event plan A doesn't happen, but all your attention is on your plan B. At the end of the year, the vehicle doesn't come and you say, oh, thank God I didn't wait for it. Thank God I planned aside. But the key is what you focus on is what you get. What you focus on is what expands. You are focusing on transportation and that's what you got. So at the end of the day, there was an expected end. And the expected end was not what you wanted, but what you were preparing for. Because your actions tell you what you are expecting, your words can tell you what you wanted. In the Bible, we see the story about Job. Many of us know the story of Job. We know the problems he faced. But the Bible tells us he made sacrifices regularly. Peradventure, his children had sinned against God. So he was making the sacrifices to appease God. And so on the outside, everybody looking at him will have thought this man is a very spiritual man. He's always making sacrifices. But at the end of the day, we found out what was actually in his mind. In the scriptures, we see Job said, what I greatly feared had come upon me. So what he had feared was the calamity. His actions were in line with the calamity he was expecting. And so what he got was the expected end. So the fact he was saying one thing, it was one thing was different, but his actions were clearly pointing to what he expected. our expectations are key, but it's not just what we say, it's what we put our actions towards. Again, in the seminar I talked about, T. Harv Eker talks about what you focus on expands. I've heard that also quite a few times. And that's the truth. You might want something, but your expectations, your focus is on something else. And then when you get that something else, you are prepared for it. And you are saying, oh, thank God I didn't put all my hope on what I was expecting. That's why it didn't come. That's why that was not the expectation that was met. Because your hope, your plans were not in it. It was a want, but it was not an expectation. We also have to understand that it's important to start with the end in mind. Again, I was reading a book recently, and it talked about when you want to launch a business, for instance, you start by thinking of the marketing, the advert you want to put out. Describe the advert perfectly as to what the product looks like. That will help you determine what you need to do. So this expectation also, you need to clearly define it. And many of us know about the SMART goals, the fact that it has to be specific, measurable, achievable, result-oriented, and time-bound. So whatever expectation we have, we must be able to be sure this falls in line with the requirements of a SMART goal, so that we have an idea if we are getting close to it or not. So number one is to determine your expectations. That's the first. So the second is to write these expectations down. So we see in Habakkuk 2, 1-2, it says, I will stand upon my watch and set me upon a tower, and will watch to see what he will say unto me, and what I shall answer when I am reproved. Verse 2 is the key. It says, and the Lord answered me and said, write the vision down, make it plain upon tables, that he that readeth it may run with it. So first, we have to have these expectations clear in our minds, but we also have to write these things down. I remember many people said, no, I don't have to write it, I will remember it. The mere act of writing has been shown to clarify things for you, to help you bring things into perspective. I remember way back in the day when I used to write business plans for people, we realized that the act of writing a business plan helps you clearly understand what the business is. You may never look at the plan again, but that simple act of writing that plan has clarified certain things. Now, in these days, people focus more on what they call investment decks, because we understand that, plans are just that, plans. Many times the reality on ground is much different. I remember Tyson once said, everybody has a plan till he gets punched in the face. Everybody has a perfect business plan till the market punches them in the face. So the focus right now is on investment decks. But the key is sitting down and writing these things down helps you clarify things. I remember in the past, I used to speak without writing, but I realized there was a key difference from when I wrote before I spoke, in the sense that the writing actually clarified my thoughts and let me know what came before and what needs to be said. Again, research has also shown that people who write business plans are 10 times more likely to succeed than people who don't, even if they never look at the plans again. But the key is to actually write the plan. But of those that constantly looked at the plan, they were even far more successful than those that did not look at it after they wrote it. But they are still far better than those who wrote nothing at all. So one key is to determine our expectations, but not just any expectations. You don't pull these expectations out from the air. No, you must have a clear picture of where you want to be and where you are going and where you need to be in a few years. And then cascade that down to the current year you are in. What would you need to see by the end of this year to ensure you are getting to where you go? And that will also guide our actions. I know Beverly will know a bit about this. The fact that, camp for footballers is one of the strictest places they can be, because they have a vision in front of them. It's not like they cannot do all the things they want to do, or they don't like other things. They like it, but because of the vision that has been placed in front of them, they know, if I want to get to this destination, there's certain things I need to do. And all these other things, though they're enjoyable, will not help me get there. That's also what these expectations do for us. They help us understand clearly where we want to go, what we want to see. We must understand that though the Lord wants this for us, we also have our own role to play. I was listening to, I do that quite a bit, listen to audio books, read books, listen to messages and stuff. And I heard something yesterday that thrilled me. He says there is grace available for every single person, the same amount of grace. The manifestations you see in someone's life is the fact that some people either promote the grace or frustrate the grace, because you can frustrate the grace. Paul talks about not wanting to frustrate the grace. You can frustrate this grace, but the grace is available for everybody in the same amount. It's now the actions you do that determine how far you go. So yes, expectations are there. The Lord wants these things for us. I've read the scriptures where it says, Genesis 29, which talks about, this is the Lord speaking, for I know the thoughts I have towards you, said the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil. So the Lord has good plans for us. But what happens at the end, because it says now to take you to an expected end, that expected end now is what's determined by us. Because at the end of the day, we will get what we're expecting. It may not be what God wanted for us, or not the plan we had in store for ourselves, but is what we actually expected. That's why it's best to guide our actions to suit what we want. And then we get that as our expectation at the end of the day. So number one is determine your expectations. Number two is write these expectations down. The third is create an action plan and implement it. Create an action plan and implement it. So usually when I have business sessions, I ask the question, what's one thing determines if you are successful or not? What's one thing? And I hear various answers like integrity, hard work, determination, and so on and so forth. But the key is your definitions. Your life is defined by your definitions. So no matter what you say, if you say to be hardworking is the key, or integrity is the key, the question is, what do you understand by integrity? If your definition of integrity is wrong, then you will be doing the wrong thing calling it integrity. If you want to be wealthy, but your definition of wealth is wrong, no matter how much you chase that thing, you will not get that wealth you so desire. And so one of the key things to help us along these lines, to help us understand the impact of our action plan on achieving these expectations, is to understand the definition of the word called vision. Again, I was in a session about, I think 6 or 7 years ago, and I had this analogy was given to us. So it says a man asked a young boy, a 10-year-old boy, what is vision? And the boy says, Uncle, vision is what I want to be in the future. He was somehow able to follow this man or this boy to middle age. So he met the guy again sometime when he was 40, 50, and asked the boy, what is vision? And the boy says, or the man now says, vision is what I want to be in the future. Somehow he was able to meet the guy again when he was 95 and asked the guy, what's vision? And he says, vision is what I want to be in the future. So it reminded me of the signboards we saw in shops years back, where it says, no credit today, come tomorrow. Tomorrow never came. And so because the vision, definition of the vision had a futuristic approach to it, the future really never came. And so definitions are of two kinds. We have what they call the statutory definition, and we have the functional definition. The statutory definition just describes the context, but functional definition helps you understand how that thing applies to you and how you can use it. So the functional definition of vision is what I want to be in the future by reason of what I'm doing today. Because if you do nothing today, it's very unlikely you will get that vision you're looking at or expecting. The Bible tells us too in Galatians 6:7-9. It says, "Be not deceived, God is not mocked. For whatsoever a man soweth, that and that only shall the man reap." So for instance, a farmer cannot put apples or sow apples or plant apples and expect mangoes, for instance. It's just impossible. So you cannot have an expectation but plant the wrong thing and be expecting the expectation to come to pass. Whatever we want to achieve, there are certain things that need to be put in place for those things to happen. If we want finances, there's certain believing principles we need to apply and things we need to do. Even if you're talking about hard work to get finances, it's still in the Bible. Proverbs tells us about diligence. It also tells us about other givings we need to do. In the beginning, I highlighted the importance of giving. Based on the expectations you have, you must create a plan for each thing and actually follow this plan. Because if you don't follow the plan, nothing happens. And that's why by the end of the year, many people that had expectations, one, they don't stick to the expectations because it was not tied to any bigger picture. They had no vested interest in it. Two, they had no plans on how to accomplish it. They just knew this is what I want to achieve. Somehow the Lord will help me. Again, that notion that Christianity, for instance, is a lazy religion should be thrown away. Because there are certain actions you need to take. You don't just say God will provide and go and sit down. If you do that, nothing will happen. The example my own reverend gives is the fact that no matter how much you have in your bank account, it has been deposited, it has been given to you. But if you don't step out of your house, get into your vehicle, go to that bank, you will not be able to withdraw it. Even if you're using online banking, you can't get the cash. The cash is yours, but you have no access to it. So all the steps we are talking about are the access to the expectations that have already been given to you. I had mentioned grace is available for everybody. It's not what you do that either propels the grace or frustrates the grace. So our actions are extremely key in ensuring we achieve these things. So the first thing we need to do is determine these expectations. The second we need to do is to ensure you write these expectations down. And the third is constant monitoring and evaluation. So you need to constantly take a look at the plan you've put down. Because as the year progresses, you may discover there are certain plans you put in place at the beginning that you found a better way of doing. For instance, when I teach innovation and business, I talk about the impact of technology on many industries. I talk about the example of this young lady that every time before she bakes bread in the oven, she cuts the edges of the bread off before she places it in the pan. So one day her husband was quite curious and he said, "Darling, why do you cut the edges of the loaf before you put it in the oven?" And she says she has no idea. That's how her mother used to do it. And so the husband was now very curious. He called the mother and says, "Mama, why do you cut the edges of your loaf before you put them in the oven?" She says she doesn't know. That's how her own mother used to do it. Now, being extremely curious, he called the grandmother and says, "Mama, why do you cut the edges of the loaf before you put them in the oven?" You know what she said? She said, "My son, in my day, the pans were too small to take the entire loaf. And so I used to cut the edges first before I put it in the oven." But right now, things had changed, but they were still doing it the same way. So many plans we had in the beginning of the year, there are certain plans we had based on the knowledge we had at that time. As the year progresses, we may find better and easier ways to do these things. It's important we go back and tweak those plans to ensure those things come to pass faster. I remember also when I first arrived in Lagos, that was a few years ago. Um, I the move was a bit, heavy for me. Let me use that word. And so I had to leave certain things behind and sell a few things I had. So I arrived in Lagos with no vehicle, nothing. And so I was staying with my cousin. And I had to follow him to the island every morning because that's where the office was. And we lived in Ikeja on Island then. So there was a particular route he took to work every single day. And in my mind then, that was the main way or the only way to get to the island. But when I got a vehicle, I realized there are multiple ways of getting there. But I could not hold fast to that way because now I know other ways. So you may need to give me a few minutes.
That's absolutely fine. I know it's Nigeria, so that's just how things are. I hope everybody's enjoying it so far. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We are currently on the first ever mind map session hosted by Develop Your A Game, a platform I started not that long ago. So I really hope we're all enjoying it. I guess this is just a chance to take stock and I'm taking notes. I don't know about you guys, but I'm taking notes like drastically. I'm writing. But yes, this session is on biblical principles of success. So hopefully Dr. AB will come back so we can continue the amazing session because I'm learning so much. I'm learning so much from him as it is. Thank you so much. So just bear with us.
All right.
All right. Okay. Welcome back.
So I'm back. Yeah. So I think I was on the third step, which is constant monitoring and evaluation, talking about the importance of reevaluating our strategy and making sure there are no better ways of doing it currently. So no matter how you started doing it, you must try and constantly watch out and find out if there are other newer ways of achieving these things. For me, for instance, especially as regards to being a believer, there are certain expectations I have put forth. But during every service I attend, I try and figure out if there's something new I hear that can help me achieve these things much faster. So I've actually started a ritual. Every Sunday, immediately after service, before I eat my lunch, I take a look at these expectations and make sure there are no additions, or just to remind myself I'm on track. Look at how the last week went. Did I apply all the things I was meant to apply, and all such things, to be sure I'm on the right path. And the important thing is that many of us know these things, but it's important to tie it to a habit. Like I remember when I was still actively practicing medicine, we used to tell our patients, for instance, your morning medication should be tied to when you're brushing your teeth, or something you know you must do every morning. So you associate the two things to themselves. So each time you brush your teeth, you know I'm supposed to take these tablets. So I associate it to something you do either weekly or whenever you want to check up on what you're doing. And then make sure those things are aligned. So each time you do the first thing, you know you are supposed to do the second. And constantly looking at it brings it to the fore of your mind, reminds you of what you're supposed to do. As the week goes on, you are constantly reminded of the things or actions you are meant to take. So the first is we are supposed to determine our expectations. The second is write them down. I know many of us don't like to write For instance, I myself, I can't remember when last I I held a biro, except when I'm filling a form in the bank, or you go and visit an estate and you have to write your name down and stuff like that. But even throughout medical school, it may be strange, but I never actually wrote anything down. I didn't write notes, I didn't do anything, because I always photocopied the notes of the person next to me. That was my modus operandi throughout medical school. Unfortunately, it paid out. But in this day, there are now devices. People also talk about, oh, books are more reliable. Your computer can crash, your system can crash, and you can lose these things. Fortunately, even the biggest cloud hosting companies have backups to their backups to their backups now. So I'm relatively comfortable that no matter what, I'll be able to get these things. So if you're like me and you don't like writing on paper and biro, our devices are there, store them on the cloud, or have them written somewhere. Although some people talk about the act of actually writing with your hand, but I don't believe in that, honestly. If I can type it and put it in my device, it works for me. So step 2, no matter the kind of person you are, write these things down, either in a notebook, in your journal, or in your tablet, or them in the cloud. They must be written down. And step 3, you don't just write them down and forget about them. You need to constantly take a look at them, constantly reevaluate them. Am I getting closer? Am I getting farther? So again, it reminds me of something similar that happened recently when I was talking to my team about our plans for the year. So we put out our projections for the entire year. And then for the first time, because usually we do more of monthly breakdowns, but now we do a weekly breakdown and know on time if you are deviating or not. So by Monday morning, you assess the last week and know if you should double down this week because last week wasn't so good. So the earlier you find out you are leaving the track, the better for you. And so the more you constantly look at these things, the more you know if you're on track or not, or what you should adjust. So 1, determine your expectations. 2, write these expectations down. 3, constantly create an action plan and implement. 4, constantly monitor and evaluate. So before I jump to the last one, which should have been our bonus, I would like to point out some things. So the key is to have an expectation that surprises you. It should not be too much that it dissuades you, but it should actually get you out of your comfort zone. I once read a book, I think it was Brian Tracy, who talks about some goals being demotivators in the sense that once you see it, you know it's highly unlikely to ever happen. For instance, somebody has not made 1 million before, and his expectation for the year is 100 million or 1 billion. Even looking at it daily will discourage him faster than not taking a look at it. But it's also important to have a goal that scares you. If your goal doesn't scare you, or your expectation does not scare you, it's not something to aspire to. If you can actually achieve it without doing much, then it's not a substantial goal that will move you forward. So the first time you write the expectation, it should scare you, it should make you uncomfortable. But there's something they talk about called cognitive dissonance. So meaning there must be a clash between what you think is possible and what your expectations are. So there must be a constant clash between them. But the more you say these expectations, the more you look at the expectations, the more you focus on these action plans, these expectations become something that your mind accepts can take place. So the more they clash, the better for it. Because as they clash often, they begin to align. And so eventually your expectation becomes something you truly believe you can achieve. So the key next step is to maintain this expectation, no matter what happens. So if things look like they're not going the way you want them to, maintain the expectation, double up on the action plan, constantly look at it, and have those things in place. As regards to this, I constantly give the example of a passage in the Bible about Elijah. So it's from 1 King chapter 18. So I'll read verse 1 and 2, and then I'll jump down to verse 43 to 46. So 1 Kings 18, 1 to 2. It says, and it came to pass after many days that the word of the Lord came to Elijah in the 3rd year, saying, go and show yourself to Ahab, and I will send rain upon the earth. And Elijah went to show himself upon Ahab, and there was a sore famine, as there was a sore famine in Samaria. So actually, a few years before, he had made a declaration that there will not be rain. So now the Lord had told him to go and tell them rain is coming. So now verse 43 says, and said to his disciples, go up now. So once Elijah was told this, to go and tell Ahab to expect rain, he still went further to go and pray. Because the fact the word had come out was not enough for it to take place. Some people say this is the Lord's plan for my life. Yes, it's the plan for your life, but what exactly are you doing? What action are you taking? Which basically has been what we've been describing. He still went out to take steps to ensure it happens. So he went to pray. And then when he was praying, he said to his servants, go up now, look towards the sea. And he went up and looked and said, there is nothing. And he said, go again 7 times. So while he was praying, he told the servants to go up to the sea and look towards the clouds and see if any clouds were forming to show rain was coming. So the servants went and came back and said, no, there were no clouds. But he told the servants to keep on going 7 times. So we've also been made to understand that 7 is the number of perfection, which meant basically go until you see something. So the 4 says, and it came to pass that the 7th time he said, behold, there ariseth a little cloud out of the sky, like a man's hand. And he said, go up, say unto Ahab, prepare thy chariots and get thee down, that the rain stop thee not. And it came to pass in the meanwhile that the heaven was black with clouds and wind, and there was a great rain, and Ahab rode and went to Jezreel. So the key here is, in my opinion, the cloud the size of a man's hand was not enough of a cloud to tell him the rain was coming. And so many of us have done all the things I've said, and we see a slight change or something that is showing just signs that something is about to happen. But in our mind, we don't take hold of it and see that as a validation that the things we are doing is working. So we are meant to constantly maintain this expectation and keep looking out with an outstretched neck to see if it's coming or not. So each time we focus on our goals, each time we are looking out, we're making sure that the things we try to get are coming. The problem is that many times people are not looking out, they are not expecting. So even when the things come, they don't even know it has come because they were not looking out for it. So the key now, after doing all that has been said, as Paul said, after doing all to stand, after doing all you have done to make sure these expectations come, we need to keep on looking out and expecting these things to come to pass. So step 1 is to make sure we have, let me recap the entire session very quickly. So I actually began by talking about myself and expressing why I had to go back to the scriptures to discover the keys to success. Because as I said, I had tried various businesses, done various things that didn't seem to succeed. But it's not because I had no idea what business was, because I had a distinction in my MBA, I had won business plan competitions. So it's not like I didn't know what business was. Things were just not working the way I expected to. But as I got closer to God, I realized that certain principles were in the Bible. And I had to go back for myself to discover them, which gave rise to my book, Becoming a God Kind of Millionaire, and also principles we are hearing about right now. I also gave an example of 6 principles, talking about the fact that wealth creation is tied to giving, talking about the fact that we are what we think about, which is also in the Bible, talking about auto-suggestion, which Napoleon Hill talks about a lot, which is just confession. And I calmed down on what we're talking about right now, which is goal setting, but for us as believers is our expectation setting or putting our expectations and plans down. We then said the first step was to actually determine what the expectations are. We talked about the importance and why this should be done. We talked about making sure we write the expectations down. We talked about creating an action plan and implementing it. We talked about constant monitoring and evaluation. And finally, we talked about maintaining this expectation. I started the session by talking about the fact that everybody here really belongs to the top 10% of whichever society they find themselves. And how do I know this? Because research has constantly shown that only the top 10% of people take out time to develop themselves. So no matter what you are seeing right now, no matter what the account is saying, no matter how 2020 was, the fact you are here now means you are part of this top 10%. Because you are not the only one that heard about this session. Many other people heard about it. Many other people saw it, but it did not speak to them, it spoke to you. So you are part of this 10%. We also talked about the fact that everything happens twice. The fact that you are here but may not have seen the manifestations of the quote-unquote 10% will simply mean you are in the creation phase. We say everything happens twice. It happens first in our minds before it comes to the physical. We talked about Genesis 2:3 that talks about God resting on the seventh day from what he had created and made, stating that creation and making were two different things. There's conceptualization and there's bringing into the physical. We talked about the fact that everything we see is an obsolete thought of somebody else. No matter what's in existence right now, it did not exist until somebody thought about it. So the fact that we're here, it means we're in the creation phase if we've not seen the manifestations. Some of us may have begun to see the manifestations, but some may have not. But if you have not, be rest assured you're in the creation phase. And the only way for you to move from creation to the manifestation phase is to feel the clouds. The Bible tells us in Ecclesiastes 11:3 that when the clouds are full, the rain will fall. So we need to keep on filling our clouds with things similar to what we're doing now. When the clouds are full, the rain will fall. And then no matter what you hear today, the only evidence of learning is an improved behavior. If you leave this session and do nothing you heard today, then you have not learned. They say learning is two things: increase in capacity and capability. Many of us focus on the capacity part. What we're doing now is an increase in capacity. We're getting more knowledge. But capability is only increased as you begin to practice the things you heard. That's why you hear people say, I've heard it before. But the question is, have you done it before? And it's my firm belief that as you hear and do, 2021 will not be like any other year you have experienced. You can take my word for it. So thank you very much, Beverly. I think that's all I have for us this evening.
Wow, wow, wow. Like, so I have a page full of notes. That was amazing. I don't know how everybody else felt, but I was time after time after time. You know what you said about we've heard it before, but have you done it before? Have you implemented? Have you put it into practice? I really loved how you really succinctly took us through, the 5 stages. I'm calling it stages because really it's almost like it's cascading upwards, It begins in the mind first. Everything around us happened in the mind first, and then it manifests. It's just been a fantastic session. I hope people have questions. I hope people have things they want to share. We have about 30 minutes. No, the time is 2040. So if you want to share your thoughts on this session, if you want to, just voice out, maybe you're building something new this year and you've heard something today that has, this is my very first, I would say, mastermind session, thing I'm very, very passionate about, but always been shy. And a friend of mine who's on this a webinar, I actually said to her, I just find it so difficult to people about what I'm doing. So, believers, setting our expectations and actually coming through with it, Dr. Ofrey. That's the most important thing. You need to actually follow through with what it is you have in your mind, because whatever we believe, whatever we conceive, we believe and we can. If you don't, then nothing changes. So I really love what you said also about, when the clouds are full, the rain will fall. I wrote that down. That was deep. That was deep. I wrote that down. That was really, really deep. I don't know if anybody wants to share anything, any thoughts. Please.
Let me add one more thing first to what you said, and that's many times
Go on.
we have found ways to convince ourselves that there are certain things that are stopping us from what we want to do. Again, I have a book that I call Silencing Dream Killers. And the idea is that almost everything you can think about as a reason to stop you has been addressed. And so if it has been addressed and you still don't go ahead to do what you want to do, then it means honestly you don't want that thing. So you should stop deceiving yourself. So also these sessions, many of us, like for instance, say we are hungry. You say you are hungry, you are hungry. They brought food for you to eat and you don't eat it. So you've told yourself now that you're truly not hungry. So if you leave this type of session, hearing all the type of things you heard and actually take no step at all, then you should be rest assured that you're comfortable as it is. And don't blame anybody for what happens.
Absolutely. I kind of feel the same with you as well. I read something just today, fear, right? And there's two kinds of fear. There's the healthy fear, which is almost like the fear of the Lord, that reverence that we have, wanting to do the right thing so that we can please God. But then there is the ungodly fear. That is the fear that is completely baseless, unfounded. Fears that are negative. Nothing negative ever comes from God. Nothing negative ever comes from God. So that also ties in with tonight. Anything that is stopping you from achieving your dreams, if it's coming from a negative, it's not from God, and you just have to push through. Everybody has to push through. I loved what you said about you never took notes. I thought that was quite incredible. You never took notes, but somehow you just believe that you still push through. So I think all of us here, in one way, shape, or form, we're all trying to push through whatever obstacles are in our way, whatever boundaries are there that are preventing us from getting to wherever it is we want to get to. I see some comments from Adiola. Thank you so much for the invitation. Dr. AB is right. I've heard this topic so many times, and it really is in the implementing that. Iffy Peters, I started this 2021 writing down everything I needed to achieve. I needed discouragement, especially the ones that really made me laugh are achievable. Thank you, Doctor, and you too, Bev. It's a pleasure, absolute pleasure. You don't know how much these things help myself as much as it helps you. Adira Drew, another good friend of mine, my partner in sports, she says, thank you for the session. Yeah, it looks like people are really taking in deep what you said about, setting expectations, having that vision for yourself. And I love what you said about defining. Your life is defined by your definition. So if your definitions are, are toxic, improper, inappropriate, your definitions will take you it may seem as if you're on the right path, but eventually things might go off kilter. Like that you said, your life is defined by your definitions. And if those definitions don't align with that struggle. And I loved also what you said about grace is available for everyone. I love that. Great. Either you are propelling yourself to the grace. My eye watches. I don't know what it's saying to me. Either you're propelling yourself towards that grace or you're frustrating the grace. And I love that. So it's almost like you can hear the word, but it's not sinking in. You can see the signs on the wall, but your anxiety or your, whatever idiosyncrasies you have prevent you from following through. So that really spoke to me because I'm like that as well. I will see all the signs, I'll see everything, and I will still tell myself, no, maybe, So I really like that. I don't know. No one, I think everybody is shy or people are just happy listening. But yeah, I mean, it's been super enlightening. This recording, this session is also being recorded. So if you want to share it with friends, colleagues, it will be available on the Develop Your A Game website. And also Dr. Ofrey. I actually did a really nice podcast episode with Dr. Ofrey, which was brilliant, about how he started his tech business. So if you want to know more about him, the details about him are also in that podcast. So I mean, at this point, I don't know if, unless anybody else has anything else to say, I suppose we'll probably start rounding up. It's been such an enlightening session. I've learned so much. Trust me, I have a whole list of different things that I picked up and that I will put into practice, especially the habits that we create by association. I liked what you said. If you are the type of person that needs to be triggered. So, for me, I find that it's easier to do motion on the way to the office. So it takes me a while to get in. So I'll do it on my way in by ferry, that sort of thing. Oh, I have a question coming from Leonard. Hi, Leonard. I'm glad you joined. Okay. He said, thanks for this wonderful session. It's a wake-up call. Oh, that's my cousin, actually. Yes, my sweetheart. Thank you so much for joining. Yes, it's a wake-up call for all of us. And yes, before we move on, thank you, doctor, for the session. What you focus on is what you get. I love that. This helps me to focus on only the more relevant things. I appreciate your time, sir. Thank you, Bev, for putting this together. Looking forward to the next session. Thank you, 248189. I don't know your name, but thank you so much. And yes, the next session will be monthly. We're going to be holding these every month. So thank you so much, Ofrey. You've been amazing. I knew you would be amazing. I didn't know you'd be this amazing, but I knew you'd be amazing. So thank you so much. I don't know if you have anything else you want to say, anything, any last
All
thoughts,
right.
but otherwise,
Yeah. So
yeah, we're good.
it's just
Thank you
basically
so much.
the key thread of what I've been talking about, which is actually doing these things. Like people have all said, it's not something new, but the actual key is doing. So if nothing is done, then that's so it goes back to the wants and expectation. If nothing is done, then it means you are not really expecting anything to happen. You just wanted something, but your actions and everything else told you what you're really expecting. So after hearing this, I hope we'll all take that step because it's important for 2021 to be a better year for us. And I've had these sessions in the past, but I think the sessions this
Absolutely.
year have more of a reason behind them because I've had a blog. I wrote about these things for like 3 years, but this is the first time I've actually spoken about them myself on stage, in church, and in various places, because this is the year we need to actually take these steps to live wherever we are.
All right, there. Thank you so much. That's the one. Take some steps to get to where you really want to get to. Well, remember to stay safe, wear your masks as you go out, and take care. Don't forget to register on the website so you can stay updated on future mind map sessions. And don't forget to take care and God bless. Bye.
All right. Bye.
Cheers.